And so we enter Endgame.
Hello, one and all, and welcome back to Storytime. And also welcome to the last and final installment of MCU Retro Endgame, my long-running series sifting through and evaluating the so-called movies in the MCU Infinity Saga.
Please don't call yourself that.
By anyone's reckoning, the greatest movies ever made. Here at last, at the shores of the sea, we've reached our final destination, Avengers Endgame, the 3-hour saga-capping finale in which the Avengers fight their nemesis Thanos again, and keep him from using the Infinity Stones to wipe out the universe. Again. This movie, to the shock of everyone, including me, is not as terrible as Avengers Infinity War, which may well be the worst blockbuster ever made. That said, it's pretty much only not worse because it manages to dodge the veiled Holocaust revisionism Infinity War traffics in, still has an impossibly lazy story that doesn't make any sense, and indulges in other grody things. I'll be spoiling the movie. It's time travel. They just use time travel, as well as saying some not nice things about it. You know the drill. No one's making you stay here and watch if you're not into this. You can take your eyeballs elsewhere.
And stay out of the Woolworth.
Avengers Endgame is a 2019 film directed by the inimitable Russo brothers, the visionary filmmakers who also brought us these turds. The film was written by these guys, the peerless writers who charted out the Trashfire screenplays for those and other turds. Too scatological? Too bad. This movie picks up where Infinity War left off, with what is left of the Avengers trying to pick up the pieces after Thanos eliminated half of all life or whatever. This movie they use the clarifying term creatures, which actually clarifies nothing. Are plants creatures? What about fungi? Or does it just mean like dogs? Carol Danvers shows up after clocking out of her self-appointed position as intergalactic space cop to bring Tony Stark back to Earth, and then the gang go to kill Thanos, who they're able to track down by the screenplay. That was easy, but it's too late. He's already used the stones to destroy the stones. Somehow, and now it looks like everyone stays dead for good.
I lost. Wait a minute, I'm not supposed to lose. Let me see the script.
Till Scott Lang is brought out of quantum purgatory by the screenplay, and they concoct a time travel scheme to get the stones from the past and use them to bring everyone back in the future. But oh no, Thanos is also brought back to the future by the screenplay, and they are forced into another final showdown. Who's gonna win this time?
Wait! I get another shot!
Unlike most of our recent MCU outings, this movie remembers that in order to have a plot, you have to have characters who want things. So, some of our characters want things, such as Steve Rogers, who wants girl.
Daddy horny, Michael.
Tony Stark, who wants girl, but like in a different way.
I just want my kids back.
Oh, that's all. Everyone else just wants to undo time so they can bring everyone back because the screenplay told them to.
I get another shot!
And also maybe because they feel like guilt and stuff that they aren't capable of processing in healthy ways because they are all well-adjusted, emotionally intelligent people. You know, like heroes. For example, Thor becomes an alcoholic recluse who abandons what is left of his people when they arguably need him the most. We are supposed to think this is funny. Barton honors the legacy of the family he loved so much and quit the Avengers for by becoming a violent murderer after they all dust in the wind. Oh, that's all. Aside from that, we have Bruce Banner, who acts on his long-simmering attraction to Natasha by deciding to become a permanent smart Hulk for some reason, leaving her to coordinate things at Avengers headquarters all by herself. How romantic!
I wanna know what love is.
Does anyone know what happened to his first true love, scientist lady?
Oh, my one true love.
Marvel loves women. We have Nebula, who, does stuff, I guess, and also Carol, who, as we discussed in her video, is not in her 60s for some reason, and also is off doing things, which I'm sure are very important and we'll see at some point. Anyway, the important thing is that all of our original Avenger crew, plus a black sidekick, were randomly spared when all of the rest of them were randomly killed, and they happened to go on just the right time heist adventures to resolve all their lingering internal conflicts so they can save the day again.
Oh, how convenient!
Or if they're women, be sacrificed by the screenplay so the plot can happen. Tomato, tomato. The plot for this movie is actually incredibly basic. I would say refreshing compared to the convoluted messes we usually get, but that actually wouldn't be accurate. Really, it's just your basic and then, in which there are no meaningful setbacks and all development is accomplished through dialogue with ghosts. This is the structure. Prologue. Kill Thanos by going directly to his house and killing him. Act 1. Plan the time heist by doing science stuff off screen and telling us there are no consequences for time travel. Act 2. Do the time heists, in which 6 teams sequentially revisit a scene from another movie and collect a magic rock after overcoming minor circumstantial obstacles and talking with their dead parents or themselves. Act 3. Ugly, boring battle over the MacGuffin glove, culminating in its use to destroy the bad guys. Epilogue. Funeral and dancing. No one is working towards anything other than undoing the last movie, except for the people who we're told have motivations and desires for getting girls.
Daddy horny, Michael.
In which case they also think about those things a couple of times. What a finale! Allow a brief comparison to another epic finale, The Return of the King, which features actual development and resolution for all significant characters, including Merry and Pippin fully coming into their own by enlisting in armies, Theoden overcoming his sense of shame and fatalism, Eowyn finally getting to fight and also find a beautiful man, Gimli and Legolas admitting they are true friends, Aragorn fulfilling his destiny by accepting his role as king and then leading the people to victory, Sam and Frodo completing the quest of the Fellowship, and then fulfilling their own destinies by marrying Rosie Cotton or finding peace by going to the Undying Lands. All things they have been working towards throughout the entire series, plus a lot of other stuff too. In this epic finale we get Steve dances with Girl, finally, a thing he has only sporadically thought about and which has not motivated him to do anything else until now. Bruce finally coming to terms with Hulk by becoming Hulk. Somehow, off screen. No other characters have any lingering motivations or unresolved conflicts. I mean, I guess you could say Thor comes to terms with not feeling like he should be king, but he also did that already, twice, in Thor the Dark Elves and Thor the Thor. So I don't know why it counts here again. And I guess Natasha isn't haunted by her past anymore since she's dead. How inspiring and narratively satisfying, just like Sidney Carton, am I right? What I'm saying is, the movie isn't about anything because Marvel spent a decade making movies that also weren't about anything, featuring characters that were never developed in any meaningful way. As a result, the only thing Endgame can do is just undo Infinity War.
I get another shot!
Which it does in the laziest and most uninteresting way possible, while shouting to us as loudly as it can that this is the epic finale. Isn't it so epic? No, it's just dull, and more than a little dumb. Speaking of dumb, we need to talk about something that, remarkably, I don't think has come up so far in my MCU analyzing, and that thing is contrivance. When crafting a story, one has to walk a tricky line. Everything that happens needs to ideally feel spontaneous and organic, like the characters are actually making choices and influencing action, even though everything is being carefully orchestrated by you, the writer. As audience members, we also like stories that, while they are happening, feel surprising, but when seen from the conclusion, feel inevitable. For example, at the beginning of Lord of the Rings, we feel like the story could go anywhere, and we don't know how it will end. But by the time we reach the end, we come to feel that really there was only one satisfying way for the story to conclude, that this ending was inevitable. Which, of course, is the result of an elaborate act of contrivance by the storyteller. Every story you have ever read, seen, or heard, good or bad, has been made entirely of contrivance. That is, they are contrived, literally, by an author. Well-told stories have the ability of obscuring the obvious contrivances of plot and characterization, allowing us to feel the story is happening spontaneously before our eyes. Poorly told stories don't have this ability, and we are left with a feeling of disappointment. If a story feels obvious or stereotypical, or you guess the ending, that means the story was not able to effectively hide its contrivances from you. You can basically see how the sausage is being made, and the fantasy is blown.
I was just looking for some feedback.
It was a little contrived.
At no point is Avengers Endgame able to hide its contrivances. And not only that, but the contrivances it chooses to use are pretty much the laziest ones possible. Time travel. They used time travel. Yes, time travel is possibly the most lazy of all lazy plot contrivances. It's basically a narrative get-out-of-jail-free card, A hard refresh where all consequences and development are erased by magic, so the writer doesn't have to do anything hard to get out of the corner they painted themselves into.
Work was hard, so we quit.
What?
But obviously that's not to say a story can't feature time travel. Many good ones do, but introducing time travel 5 minutes before it happens in a story world where it has previously been impossible is, lazy, and therefore makes us as audience members suspicious. Now pair that with the hastily added conflicts the characters have, all of which basically take the form of past regrets, and who at all is surprised that the story feels like it was engineered in a lab to resolve those conflicts as efficiently and nostalgically as possible, so we can get to the third act and some kick punching. Let's go one by one through the time heists and I'll show you what I mean. New York. There are 3 magic rocks collected in New York at the time of the Space Centipede invasion in Avengers 1. Now, this in itself is a lazy contrivance concocted so we could feel nostalgia for another movie that we all supposedly loved. Isn't this shot so epic? The heroes picked this location because, for some reason, they have limited time travel trips due to limited Pym particles. Even though they could time travel to basically any other point in the past and collect as many Pym particles as they wanted, but whatever. Anyway, the yellow rock and the scepter doesn't matter apart from letting us see Captain America fight Captain America. Isn't it so cool, guys? And the green rock, which at the time was held by Tilda Swinton, who didn't live in New York but fortunately happened to be there, also doesn't matter apart from letting us see her talk with the ghost of Bruce Banner and give contrived and very important exposition about needing to return all of the stones to exactly where they were taken from. Otherwise, everyone would go to the darkest timeline for some reason.
Of all the timelines, this is clearly the darkest, which is why I propose we commit to being evil. I've made us all black goatees out of felt. I suggest you put them on until you're able to grow your own.
Don't worry, it doesn't actually matter at all since the stones get returned off screen by Steve at the end with no problems. That was lucky. But the blue rock in the Tesseract is important because Loki ends up stealing it and Steve and Tony have to go on an Inception time heist within a time heist to get it from the S.H.I.E.L.D. base. And they just happen to go on a day where Tony can meet and talk to his father, who doesn't work at the S.H.I.E.L.D. base, to, I guess, finally resolve any lingering daddy issues or whatever.
Oh, how convenient!
And Steve can leer at Peggy Carter through a window and remember that he's still horny for her after all of these years and also dating her niece.
Daddy horny, my...
Phew. Good thing it was the 2 of them that happened to go on that journey and not any other combination of available Avengers. Like, what if it had been Natasha, or Barton, or Bruce, or Thor? Oh yeah, nothing thematic would have happened. This is contrivance. Asgard. They decide to collect the red rock when it is inside Jane when she is on Asgard. For some reason. Not the place where it was hidden for thousands of years by Odin, or when it is in Jane on Earth, or when it is in rock form at Benicio del Toro's house on Nowhere. Nope, they go to Asgard so that Thor can remember the good old days and see his one true love who he's definitely still in love with and that the movies definitely didn't just forget about.
Oh, my one true love.
And also his mom, with whom he can have a heart-to-heart pick-me-up. Like if they decided to go anywhere else or with anyone else, nothing thematic would have happened. Contrivance. Xandar. They collect the purple rock on the planet Peter Quill steals it from in Guardians 1, basically so we can relive his Redbone lip-syncing and feel nostalgia. Also, there's the whole future Nebula being possessed by past Nebula for some reason. So that we can get Thanos back into the plot, even though that could happen simply by having him find out someone is stealing the purple rock he wants and discovering that it is another Nebula. But whatever. Contrivance. Planet Soul. Finally, we come to the orange rock, which of course is located only on the Soul Planet, whatever it's called. And we, the audience, also know the price for obtaining it, which it seems our heroes do not, although Nebula knows what Thanos did to Gamora to get it. Whatever, I guess that never came up in all their careful planning. Good thing they happened to send Natasha and Barton, who, you'll remember, apparently have some sort of deep connection to each other or something. Remember how often we've seen that actually depicted on screen in scenes in movies over the years, and how they don't just briefly mention other missions that happened in the past off screen, not in movies, that apparently they bonded over or something? Anyway, it's lucky the screenplay sent them instead of literally any other 2 people in the group. Like, even out of the 4 of them that go to space, what if Natasha and Barton had gone to Xandar instead? It actually kind of makes sense for Nebula to go to the Soul Planet to maybe try and figure out why Thanos killed Gamora or get revenge or something. Then she and Rhodes would have got there and Red Guy would give his spiel, and then they'd look at each other awkwardly and be like, honestly, I don't even know you. and then go home empty-handed. Instead, we get to pretend to be emotional while Natasha and Barton pretend to fight to see who sacrifices themselves. Contrivance. I think, in a story, you're allowed a couple of convenient coincidences, or moments of chance, or fate, obviously orchestrated by the writer to bring about a certain moment for characters. The problem is that once they start adding up, they add up quick. We haven't even got to Tony Stark's child, who should have been a thing going back at least as far as Civil War. But all of a sudden, partway through this movie, he's got a cute kid in his life that he's afraid to lose. Guess what's gonna happen, guys? Everything that happens in this movie feels too convenient to be believable, so it feels like the movie is happening to the characters, which is sign number one of an undercooked story. In this case, the ending does feel inevitable, but not in the, oh man, that's the perfect ending kind of way. It's in the can't we be finished yet, we know where this is going already kind of way. Which isn't what you want for your big series finale, but that's just my opinion. Avengers Endgame has a major consequence problem, and that bugs me for a couple of reasons. First, from a thematic standpoint. If this movie has a theme, and that's a big if, it would be this. Good guys never have to face any consequences if they don't want to. Of course, this has turned up in other MCU movies before, most notably those that involve Captain America, but many others as well. Basically, the screenplay will bend or forget about story rules so that the bad thing won't happen to the good guy, even if it doesn't make any sense or breaks the story. It's annoying, but also it's super common in all types of blockbusters. We want the happy ending, even if it doesn't make any sense. So I guess, if I'm being charitable, Endgame gets a mild freebie here. But the second reason has to do with plot, which is a much bigger issue. See, the movie decides that it will use time travel to undo the consequences of the last movie.
I get another shot!
But it doesn't want to deal with the consequences of time travel, so it just invents consequence-free time travel instead. Easy peasy. Early on in the movie, there is some mild hand-wringing by characters who say things like, won't stealing things from the past impact the future in ways we might not be able to predict? You know, basically the central concern with every time travel narrative since the Time Machine. This isn't even new in MCU. Doctor Strange has warned multiple times about the dangers of meddling with the fabric of time. But the writers didn't want to write a time travel story. They wanted to write a story where we could go revisit older movies in the series so we could feel nostalgia and like the movie, instead of being disappointed at how lazy it was and not like the movie. So they just have Hulk get meta and say, no, that won't happen because this isn't a time travel movie. If you go to the past, that becomes your new present. The implication being that actions in that present will not impact anything in the actual story present because that present hasn't happened yet for any of the time traveling characters who are in their present, and which is just a single glorious consequence-free now.
We are dealing with science here.
I understand that trying to apply logic to time travel narratives is a fool's errand, and in this movie it technically doesn't matter anyway because they apparently return all the magic rocks to the exact time they were taken, so it was like they were never gone in the first place. So technically they did no time meddling. I mean, apart from killing Thanos from the past in the future, and Steve from the future going to live in the past. Whatever, I guess my issue is it just feels like too big of a narrative permission slip. Oh, if we make time travel not impact anything, then we don't have to worry about anything and we can just get back to servicing the fans.
Hard work made us quit.
I see.
I think that's why this bugs me. There's a world in which this little time travel gambit is interesting and clever. Heck, maybe it can even be used to set up the multiverse, instead of it happening by accident when Doctor Strange does a spell wrong because Peter Parker is being an entitled little prick and wants to undo his own consequences so he can go to MIT with the other cool kids. No Way Home sucks, guys. Our heroes know going in that messing with time might make some weird stuff happen, but they knowingly assume the risk because they are so desperate to bring everyone back. It's an action with a price, which can be used by the story to create development or something thematic. Instead, it's a freebie, which leads to nothing because it costs nothing. Well, technically not nothing, since Tony does technically die, but couldn't let this final opportunity pass by without pointing out how much Marvel loves women. I've mentioned already how convenient it is that Natasha and Barton are the ones who go to Mount Crumpet to get the orange rock from Skeletor. How, like Gamora, we're supposed to feel sad at what happens, that it is supposed to be a tragedy once again. And, to be fair, we've at least spent time with Natasha and therefore have more of a reason to maybe feel for her. But apart from just the mildest amount of characterization we got in Age of Ultron, where we learn about her history of abuse, we don't really have anything to go on, which means her death has no narrative impact and she is forgotten basically as soon as the scene fades. Contrast this with Tony Stark, who also gets a dramatic self-sacrifice, but his is essentially the last thing that happens in the movie. Everyone gets a little farewell moment and it's all sad and we're crying, and then we cut to a long funeral with Tony's voiceover telling us how sad it is, and every character whoever was in the movies shows up to pay their respects. On top of that, we've got a lot more characterization for him over the years. We've seen him change over time, and he has a family, meaning he had actual stakes, even if they were a last-minute addition and are identical to those of Barton and Scott Lang, but whatever. All of which means his death is impactful. Obviously, we can't really take a bunch of time in the middle of the movie to mourn Natasha. Stuff has to happen. But there's no reason in the world why she couldn't be, included in the memorial at the end. I don't know, it just bugs me. These movies had all kinds of opportunities to build out her character by exploring backstory or letting her do stuff, but they always chose not to. She's just good at kick punching and sneaking, which isn't a character. She and Bruce Banner could have had a really interesting relationship, but I guess there's a limit to how many Avengers can have a significant other, so the movies just forgot about it? I don't know, writing relationships is hard.
Work was hard, so we quit.
Imagine this. Natasha and Bruce do get together at the end of Age of Ultron instead of him going to space for no reason. Or maybe she goes with him. Heaven knows she doesn't do anything important in any movies after that besides, facilitate Steve's acts of terrorism. They develop together over the course of the series, perhaps even adopting a kid or something. Naturally, they go together to get the Orange Rock because they're a team, and it's sad because we know Bruce will want to sacrifice himself, but we know he can't because he's the Hulk and will just land at the bottom of the cliff unscathed. So Natasha has to do it, and it's sad and meaningful because we know things about her, and her loss will directly impact other characters apart from just having one less kick puncher around. Whatever, I'm sure there's plenty of interesting development in her flashback Black Widow solo movie that everyone saw that will make her sacrifice in Endgame meaningful and sad and stuff. Marvel loves women. Here are other things about Avengers Endgame, of which there are many. 1. The Avengers are able to collect all the magic rocks and bring everyone back, apparently. But I'm not sure exactly what happens with all that. Is it as though nothing happened for them? Do they appear in the spot they disappeared? Wouldn't the sudden doubling of life be a shock for environments that had been accustomed to the reduced population? Like in the movie, it's just portrayed as a magic wand that fixes everything, and that just feels a little lacking to me. 2. Thanos in this movie feels like a totally different character, and it doesn't make any sense. He gets super annoyed with the Avengers because they are working to oppose his plan, even though he has barely started anyway, and also they actually gather all the magic rocks together for him. But he's like, this single battle on Earth has lasted 20 minutes, and I'm tired of enough of your meddling that I'm gonna just enjoy destroying your planet, even though my defining characteristic is being dispassionate about my work. It's like the movie forgot he was young Thanos and not old dead Thanos, who probably would be kind of frustrated, but they just make the young one frustrated because writing is hard. 3. In this movie, we learned that there were apparently some survivors from the Asgard ship that Thanos completely destroyed in the last movie, which is great. But how did they escape? And when did they escape? And how did they get to Earth, being that their one ship got destroyed? Whatever, it's fine. 4. Apparently, the Valkyrie lady from Thor 3's name is literally Valkyrie, which, that's like naming your kid Green Beret. Good thing she was able to actually become a Valkyrie, unless she changed her name after becoming one, in which case, weird. 5. This movie has a weird sense of urgency for no reason I can identify. Once they start working on the time travel, it's like, guys, we gotta hurry and solve this. But there's not actually any threat or reason to go faster other than, I guess, like missing people or whatever. There are no actual stakes in this situation. But they're acting like they're Ocean's 11 and they've got to prep for the big heist in 2 weeks so they don't miss their window of opportunity. And then they make this show about all going in at the same time, like it has to be this big coordinated secret mission. But apart from the movie making up that they don't have any pimp particles, which I've talked about, there really isn't any reason they couldn't just spend, days or weeks planning in rehearsing each individual heist and then sending in the same couple of operators each time. I mean, Thor is obviously a drunken wreck, and Tony is super not into, dangerous things now because of Kid. It's just acting like there's a ticking clock for no reason at all, and I can't figure it out. 6. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Where is the freaking Air Force? In Infinity War, there was at least the excuse that the invasion took place on another continent, in another sovereign nation. But this time it's like Utica. The one at the Pentagon was like, oh, there's a massive space invasion happening in upstate New York. Think we should scramble some jets or shoot some rockets or something? I don't know, maybe the half of humanity Thanos wiped out also happened to include anyone who was or might someday be in the armed forces. 7. So, reducing the world population by half of what it was in 2019 will leave about 4 billion people, which was the world population in 1975. When baseball existed. Which means I don't really buy that there's no more baseball. I mean, unless everyone was just so depressed for 5 years that everyone stopped doing everything forever.
Whoa, ho, ho! Let's not go nuts! Would it really be worth living in a world without television? I think the survivors would envy the dead.
8. Let's talk about battle tactics, since apparently these movies just devolve into pitched land battles now. Honestly, I don't know anything about stuff like this, and I don't really care, but if your side had the ability to open up spinny portals and literally put them anywhere, and also your existence was not known to your enemy, would you not want to, I don't know, use that element of surprise to maybe, flank them or something? To make it harder for them to fight you? Or whenever you can slowly line up in a single long row like it's the Battle of Hastings, I don't care. Also, the entire battle is being fought over the glove with the magic rocks in it, so wouldn't it be easier to use a spinny portal to take the glove to literally any other place in the galaxy and hide it for a minute? To be safe, instead of just having a child run around the battlefield. Just a thought. 9. Steve goes by himself to return all the magic rocks for no reason at all. Then he decides to stay in the past and live his life with Peggy, rejoining the Avengers as a very old man. This has no impact on any events because the screenplay told us so, meaning apparently that he was not needed to fight aliens in New York, or to unmask Hydra at S.H.I.E.L.D., or to fight Ultron, or to meet, befriend, and recruit Sam, or to help unbrainwash Bucky. So that's fortunate. Thanks, screenplay.
Oh, how convenient!
10. Also, let's talk a moment about Steve's choice to stay behind, which I find problematic and annoying. It just feels really selfish. For one, he doesn't actually know that staying behind won't cause enormous problems. We learned that removing things like the magic rocks from their timeline creates issues unless they are put back exactly how they were. Why does adding things, like a person, not do that? But besides that, he basically decides to leave his friends Bucky and Sam forever without really priming them for it or saying goodbye. Bucky might be in a vulnerable psychological state and needs someone like Steve, literally the only person who might understand what he's been through, to talk to. And of course Sam now has no purpose at all since his white boss is going away and he's a black MCU character who isn't from Wakanda. Someday. Whatever, now he's the Captain America. Honestly, the worst thing about it is that Steve is just really smug about the whole thing. Like his best friends in the world are asking him about the love of his life and he's like, nah, I'm not telling you. Get over yourself.
Oh. Hello, Buster. Here's a candy bar. Oh, no, I'm withholding it.
11. And to top it all off, the movie has the nerve to make us feel like this is a deserved, peaceful rest for Steve, a man who until very recently decided being a terrorist was more important than obeying and upholding duly enacted international law. He finally gets his dance to It's Been a Long, Long Time, which is a disturbingly manipulative song choice on the behalf of the storytellers given the song's context and Steve's, shall we say, dubious service record. If you didn't know, the song was recorded by the Harry James Orchestra with Kitty Callan on vocals and debuted in October 1945. It's written from the perspective of a person welcoming home a lover after the war. It's one of the great wartime songs, and if it doesn't make you feel some kind of feelings, then you're a robot. And, of course, on paper, it's the obvious choice. Steve left for the war over 75 years ago and is finally coming home. But the song puts an emotional seal of approval on his actions taken during that time, which include but are not limited to desertion, disobeying direct orders, destruction of billions of dollars of government property, destruction of billions of dollars of private property around the world, including the entire city or country of Sokovia, whatever it was, refusal to abide by international law enacted in response to his destruction of other places, acts of vigilantism and actual terrorism, and things that aren't illegal but which are still bad, like being an arrogant, ego-y prick who doesn't listen to others and considers himself superior to everyone around him because he is strong. But it's okay because he was away from his best girl and we get to almost see them almost kiss. Yay, romance! 12. Also, the music editing of It's Been a Long, Long Time into the credits music is so bad I thought it was a joke. Like, rather than let the song just play out or fade out or I don't know, Marvel decided to hire another vocalist who was not Kitty Callan to record the song's final lines and gave that person like 10 minutes to prepare so it sounds awkward and embarrassing. It's a musical kick in the shins. 13. Oh yeah, Thor's magic hammer, which he stole from himself, hoped past Thor didn't need it to defeat the Dark Elves, declared Steve worthy. For some reason, after finding him not worthy prior to him committing many of his atrocities. This one we can chalk up to poor writing and fan service because it would be a cool moment if he needs a weapon or something, but it puts another moral seal of approval on a character who is at his core a fascistic strongman. Good work, Marvel. 14. Anyway, let's talk about the other problematic captain, Captain Marvel, who can summon enough photon energy to travel across the galaxy and plow through a massive spaceship made out of space metal, but who can't do anything effective against Thanos, an organic being made out of muscle and not space metal. That's all. That's why characters with godlike powers are a problem in stories, because you have to make them artificially ineffective so they don't break the plot in half. Whatever, it's empowering. Marvel loves women. 15. Remember how all the Lady Avengers teamed up for an ultimate lady showdown with Thanos, and then that moment lasted for like 10 seconds and didn't lead to anything? Marvel loves women and definitely doesn't use female characters for purposes of embarrassing pandering. I'm out of fingers. 16. Remember how Pepper Potts was always like, "Hey Tony, I don't like your suits or violence, please don't use them," and then he destroyed all of his suits, and then he started building them again at some point, and I guess she was fine with it, and now she uses a suit of her own for fighting. Doesn't she feel just so consistent and well developed? Marvel loves women. 17. Remember how the movie equates Rhodes' disability, the result of an accident brought about by petty fighting, with Nebula's lifetime of torture and body modifications at the hands of her abuser Thanos? Yeah, girl, you just gotta work with what you got. Marvel loves women.
On the epilogue.
I think that's it, guys. After all is said and done, I think my word for describing this movie is underwhelming. One of the things we forget about it is just how forgettable it is. For being a movie that ostensibly is the dramatic and shocking conclusion to your epic story cycle, remarkably little actually happens. Our heroes kill the bad guy, steal some magic rocks, bring everyone back, and then kill the bad guy again. Apart from the scale of half of all life being brought back, which isn't really depicted anyway, nothing about what happens is actually all that epic. And I guess that's a phrase I could use for the whole series. Not really all that epic. It's long and there's a lot in it. A lot of things are done by people. But as a story, it feels incredibly shallow. Our characters don't tend to develop beyond their origin stories, and their origin stories are all moving from being an a-hole to being mildly less of an a-hole. The series' central mythology about the magic rocks is never really laid out. Things aren't really different for the world at the end than they were at the beginning. In fact, that's kind of the whole point. Thanks to the Avengers, nothing on Earth has meaningfully changed. Apart from no more Sokovia, of course. What a disappointing outcome for a series of more than 20 movies. The story world doesn't feel expanded or full of new possibility, hasn't shown us new ways of looking at things or thinking about ourselves, hasn't explored or challenged our sense of humanity. It has just told us literally a score of stories that, in their essence, are about people who didn't want other people to do something, so they punched them until they stopped. 20 times. Superheroes are meant to inspire, to make the children or grown-ups who read and watch their stories feel inspired. And in their stories, they tend to be advocates for betterment. Batman believes that Gotham is not only worth protecting, but that it can become better than it is now. Superman represents an ideal for humanity to inspire to. The X-Men advocate tolerance and inclusion in society for people who we perceive as being different. But there's nothing aspirational in MCU. The characters in MCU exist solely to protect, which of course is not a problem in itself, and it is a good thing to protect people who can't do it themselves. But there's another side to that coin, which is keeping things as they are. Few are the characters in MCU who seek to make the worlds they live in better. Safer, maybe, but that is not the same thing. They are interested only in keeping things the same, and the threats they most often encounter are threats to their own apex position in that society first and foremost. Here are examples. The first 2 Iron Man movies are about threats to Tony's private company. The Incredible Hulk is about Bruce Banner fleeing personal persecution. All 3 Captain America movies are about Steve Rogers rebelling against people telling him what to do. The first Thor movie is about his personal unworthiness to be king, and the second 2 are about geopolitical threats to the kingdom in which he has a leadership position, and therefore a position of prominence. Age of Ultron is about a protection protocol Tony invents that goes berserk. Civil War is about half the Avengers refusing to abide by the consequences of their actions in Age of Ultron, which resulted in the destruction of Sokovia. Both Ant-Mans are about Scott Lang being with his daughter, which is cute but also not making the world better. Spider-Man is about an entitled high schooler seeking approval to satisfy his ego. The rest are in one form or another about defending an outside threat to the planet or galaxy. In all cases, the goal is to keep things exactly as they are, not to, say, liberate the oppressed, or bring about some kind of change, or inspire people around them to stand up for themselves, or deal with corruption, or anything boring like that. It's just ensuring the status quo. That's all. This is true on a meta level as well. The MCU as a work of cinema is the purest manifestation of mediocrity that the cinema will probably ever produce. Its interest lies in producing sameness, familiarity, homogeny, in preserving that which is now at the expense of that which may come. The MCU represents the antithesis of creativity, and indeed of storytelling as an endeavor, and we have rewarded it by making it the most lucrative film franchise in history. Shame on us.
Shame. Bad vampire.
I think at the end of the day, that's why these movies bother me so much. It's not that they are popular or even that they are poorly made on a story level. Plenty of other movies are. People ask me why I spend so much time thinking and writing about these movies that I very obviously do not care about. And the closest I can come to an answer, beyond just plain stubbornness, is that I hate what they stand for, and I hate that they are not interrogated in the culture. These are lazy, toxic movies with lazy, toxic messages. If you claim to like movies, these turds should have no interest or value for you, and if you claim to like comics, they should be offensive to you. I suppose that's pretty much all I've got to say. To the 7 of you who have gone with me on this mad quest, I say thank you, and I'm sorry, but I hope we've had a little bit of fun anyway. To those of you who might be here for the first time, I say maybe don't look at like the early videos, which are even rougher than this if you can believe it, but some of the other ones I think are pretty good.
I added some fins to lower wind resistance, and this racing stripe here I feel is pretty sharp.
Agreed. First prize. What?
At any rate, I stand by everything I've said. At times, I felt like an insane old man shouting at clouds, but I finished what I set out to do, which makes me a hero, right? But why stop here, you say? There's other MCU movies and a bunch of TV shows. Shows get deeper into character than the movies usually have time for, and the new movies are really shaking things up. They have gays and women who don't get killed by the plot. My answer is this. If a film series can't find something to engage me with after 20 entries, I feel like I've done my due diligence. And also, if you haven't picked up on it by now, I hate Marvel and also Disney and also everything they stand for. So I'm going to finally leave this dead horse alone. Which means I can do something else now. I'm not totally sure what it'll be yet, but it will be for sure about movies that are good and not bad and that don't cause me pain. Maybe the perfect films of Christopher Guest, or the underrated Monsterverse. Let me know in the comments if you have any preferences or suggestions, and I'll be sure to take them under consideration or whatever. Anyway, that'll about do it for me, but I don't know how to wrap up a video without a plug for the next one. Good night.
I've just sucked 1 year of your life away. How do you feel? Interesting.
Could you explain your model, young man?
What's to explain? He's an idiot!